Hello and welcome to The Winding Road. I'm your host, Claire Markwick, and I am thrilled to be here. This is a show for the everyday leader, for the community leader, for the small business owner, and for those of you who are listening who wouldn't even consider yourself to be leaders. I'll be bringing you unique stories of real life leadership from across the Albury-Wodonga region to inspire, to empower, and to educate. Throughout this series, I aim to bust the widely held belief that leadership is this corporate buzzword tied to years of tenure or qualification or title. I want you to see through these conversations that it is so much more than that. Each episode also has its own ebook companion, so be sure to head to the show notes section of wherever you're watching or listening to this from to download your free resource and get the most out of this series. Alrighty then, let's get into it. In this episode, I'm speaking with Michelle Hudson. Michelle is the Director of Communications at Albury-Wodonga Health and has over 20 years experience in the marketing and communication industry. Michelle is also the brainchild behind the incredibly successful City to City Community Fun Run, held annually in Albury-Wodonga since 2015. Since the concept was born in 2013, Michelle and a dedicated team of volunteers have worked tirelessly, raised funding, generated community engagement, overcome challenges, and have successfully run 8 events, raising over $700,000 for Albury-Wodonga Health's community care services. An unassuming leader, in this conversation, Michelle and I chat about seeing opportunities and jumping for them, even if we have no idea how we're going to pull them off. We talk about the concept of always finding a solution, tapping into a higher purpose, and the importance of knowing our strengths. This is an incredibly inspiring conversation because it highlights what can be achieved with the right attitude. And I know you're going to love listening to Michelle's story. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining me for a chat today. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited too, Claire. Excited to share the story of City to City.
Fabulous. I can't wait to hear it. Now, we did hear in the introduction that you are the Director of Communications at Albury-Wodonga Health and the brainchild behind the City to City event. So for those that may not have heard of the City to City before, why don't we start off, if you could just share a little bit of a background, that gap that you saw and how the whole event came to be.
Yeah, sure. So today, the City to City is the major flagship fundraising event for Albury-Wodonga Health here in Albury-Wodonga. So the event is both a fun run and a walk, but very much a community event that starts in Albury, New South Wales and finishes in Wodonga, Victoria.
Right.
And we're really taking up the major roads, arterial roads in Albury and Wodonga and walking through parks. It's a beautiful course. We have entertainers who line the course, busking and performing, getting people from the start to the finish, providing that extra motivation. So it's a really great community event. In terms of the background, I guess I had recently relocated or returned to the Albury-Wodonga area after spending 15 years living in Melbourne. And it was sort of at that time that Albury-Wodonga Health had very recently formed. So previously it was an Albury Hospital, part of the New South Wales Health Service. There was Wodonga Hospital as part of the Victorian Health Service. And recently the two organisations had joined in a very unique arrangement, being the first cross-border public health service in Australia.
Wow.
Yeah, so really interesting times. And at the same time, there was, and it might have been 1 or 2 years into the history of Albury-Wodonga Health, and there was a lot of media at the time around funding support for Albury-Wodonga Health. There's accusations that both governments were pointing at each other to fund this cross-border health service. And it kind of dawned on me that really Albury Health just really doesn't have that major fundraising event that other health services do. Like, we all know about the Royal Children's Hospital appeal on Good Friday, the Run for the Kids, also for the Children's Hospital in Melbourne. And I had recently done the City to Surf. I'm not a runner, but
you participated.
Yeah, look, I participated. It was effectively a great excuse for 6 of my friends and I to get to Sydney for a weekend without kids, and did a 14K run while we were there. So I'm sorry, but doesn't that just show how desperate as mums we are sometimes to get some time away from our kids, when a 14K run seems like a great idea? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was just kind of a something that we had to do to get that weekend away. But yeah, so it was amazing, thousands and thousands of people. And then again, at the same time, I kind of came home and thought, we really do need that flagship event. And, now that we have the Hume bypass in place, so that you actually don't need traffic, or there's another route to get from Albury to Wodonga, we could effectively do it without disrupting that flow of traffic between the two states. Yeah, so it was like, wow, sometimes if you want to see something happen, perhaps you really just have to be that change. And so I brought a lot of people at dinner parties with my idea, and my husband's like, why don't you just throw the idea out there? And so a very carefully worded email sent to the CEO of Albury Health at the time, and suggesting the idea. And it was that was over the weekend, and then I think on Monday I had a call from his EA, probably just making it wasn't some crazy person with this idea, and am I serious? And it's like, well, yeah. And my background is marketing, communications and events. I'd worked as a volunteer on the Relay for Life committee here locally, and so I had a bit of an idea of how we might make it happen. And so they offered me, and we pitched the idea, and it was a little bit of be careful what you wish for, because they're like, okay, well, let's make it happen. So,
wow.
Okay, right, now the next steps. So pretty.
Now we've actually got to make this thing real.
Yeah, 100%. So then started the process of tapping people on the shoulder. I was particularly fortunate in that a colleague and friend at the time, super smart woman. I had the marketing and the comms background. Jen Hayes, amazing woman who had very senior financial governance skills, and really we partnered to get this off the ground. And then, really tap people on the shoulder who had an interest in community, had an interest in running, skills that we could really use in terms of organising this event. None of us had ever pulled anything like this off before, and so it was a little bit of okay, what do we do now? And that power and bringing people together to leverage their skills and insights and discuss what we do next.
I think that there's so much I want to pick up on what you've just said there. I think it's so important. Like I think the first thing that really stood out for me is something you said, like when you have an idea or when you see something that's not working or when you see a gap, there's two types of people. There's the kind of person that will stand there and bitch and complain and whinge and moan and why doesn't someone do this and why doesn't someone do that? And there's a kind of person that takes that idea by the horns, sends an email, or probably before sending email, pesters and talks the ear off husband. I've done that myself lots of times, to the point where husband goes, for God's sake, just do it or stop talking about it. And sometimes we need that nudge, don't we?
Yeah.
yeah, and you just take the bull by the horns and you do it. And like you said, you don't know all the answers. You don't know exactly how you bring this concept to fruition, but you just have some kind of faith, some kind of knowing, some kind of, maybe it's just please God, hope that it's all gonna pan out. And I think that even that just in itself is such a valuable thing for people to hear, because I think there's be so many people that might have these great ideas but be like, well, I've got no idea how to pull the budget around that. I've got no idea how to, how to physically do that. I've got no idea how to do this. I've got no idea how to do that. And those great ideas then never become a reality. And who knows what else could be out there? What could be the next big community event like this that goes for years and years and years and years and raises hundreds of thousands of dollars? You just got to have that, whether it's the nudge from hubby, whether it's just a mad crazy moment where you hit send on an email and then think, oh shit, or whatever it is, you just got to have that moment, don't you? And to me, that's awesome leadership.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. I think it was that, pushing send on that email. I kind of was like, okay, now I'm committed. And it is that sense of, okay, now I have to follow through. And but it's also really exciting, taking, and I think for me as a somewhat of a creative person, it's that adrenaline as well, in terms of, okay, it's quite exciting. It's plotting the course, and we've got our vision for what we want to achieve. But and it really took us 2 years to go from here's the idea to then the first event running. So yeah, pretty exciting. A bit of an adrenaline rush, and so many of those, oh shit, what have we done? And maybe it's not going to happen. And then, yes, it will happen. So it was a little bit of a roller coaster for those first 2 years.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've never ever been involved in an event of that size, but I've run other events without the complexities of cross borders and government departments and all sorts of things like that. Like, there must have been times where you just were pulling your hair out with challenges and things that you had to overcome.
Yeah, it's certainly, again, in that establishment phase. And I say that although no 2 years have been the same. It's like every year there's a different challenge that we go, okay, can't we just have 1 year where we just do exactly what we did last year? But that just has not happened. But, particularly in those first couple of years, because what we were proposing was we wanted close major roads. We want to really have this be disruptive, so that it's something that people go, I want to be part of that. And it was really that conviction of getting to yes when everybody was saying no in those first years. It's like, you can't close the causeway. That's going to cost you $20,000 to do that. You won't be able to be viable. It's like, well, no, we'll get sponsorship, and if that's what it costs, we understand what those costs are, and we plan for that and how we can achieve it. It's like, well, no, we can't close that road because for whatever reason, we'll need to put you on the footpath and around the back of the pool and around the football oval and back around here. And it's like, that's not part of the vision. The vision here is for this to be, again, that disruptive event, that very special, unique opportunity for people to en masse run down Dean Street and across the causeway and into Wodonga. And some of those unique, having that vision that we really want this to be very different. We want it to be accessible to everyone. So it's relatively flat course. We surprised everyone that first year with our performance. You know, we had a bugler who started everybody, who starts everyone at the start with the kind of the race call to the races bugle sounds. We have an opera singer along the course. We have our local Scott School bagpipers right on the border of New South Wales and Victoria. So just lots of lovely surprises for people to kind of go, you know, this is great fun. It's not just a fun run. I'm out here having a great time. And I'm actually doing something really amazing for my community. And again, that's where we're lucky, is that our local businesses, they backed us and supported us. We went to Hume Bank, who is our major sponsor, and said, we've got this idea. We'd like your support. We were an unknown quantity, and even to Albury Wodonga Health, same, and all of the other businesses that we reached out to say, can you sponsor it? Who took a gamble, and we thought that first year other local fun runs had attracted maybe 1,500 participants at their peak. And we're like, if we can get to 2,000, that'll be amazing.
Yeah.
And so we're counting every registration that we got.
Doing
that
little
first
dances
year,
in the office.
100%. Yes. And even the CEO at Albury Wodonga Health was saying, "Oh, look, it's okay. Even if we have to underwrite the event in its first year, and we need to chip in some funds to cover costs. It's really about also profiling Albury Wodonga Health. So that's okay." I'm like, "Oh, that's great. Thank you." And we're watching, we've got to 1,000 registrations. We're like, yeah, cool, high fives. Then we got to 1,500. We're like, whoa. And then we got to 2,000, and we're like, we haven't printed enough bibs. We haven't accounted for this. So we had to get a local printer to actually just print more bibs, because we thought actually we might have to close registrations. So that first year we had just over 3,500 people participate. That's amazing. We wrote $100,000 on the check, at which we were just, all of us, pretty much gobsmacked.
That is such a fantastic story. And if I may, I want to backtrack again and just pick up on a few things that I heard through there that I think are so amazing. So I heard inspiration. You were inspired. You had this idea. You took this idea out there, which shows influence. You then had to, you were influencing the CEO initially to even give you the go ahead, the sponsors, the community, and everyone getting involved. There was perseverance through challenge. There was, I don't know whether you call it pig-headed determination of, we're just going to find a way, and no is not going to be good enough. We're going to do it like this. There was vision. There are so many amazing attributes that I heard through that story. What do you see? Because I know we've spoken a little bit about this sort of behind the scenes and before we started recording, as to what a leader is and how people define themselves as a leader. What do you think makes a really great leader?
That's such a hard question to answer. And I guess in my time, I've worked in both commercial, not-for-profit, government organisations, and I've seen I've been really lucky to work for some amazing people across all of those organisations. And I guess no one leader stands out for me, but, for me, I get inspired by people who have a vision. And when that vision is for purpose, I think for me that is, whether that is commercial or whether that is, and I know it is that, it's Simon Sinek, isn't it? That is that for your why.
That was why.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not one of those people that is studies and reads the leadership books and so on. I wing it most of the time.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah. But that for me is really that for purpose and that passion and that confidence. That I think does make a good leader, but also respect and for me, respect earns respect. So if a leader, really empowers you and, respects the talents and the skills that you bring to the task and the challenge and to help achieve that vision, I think for me, that's really where that leadership goal is.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think there's so much. I think it's starting to drop, and this might be a sweeping generalization, but I still believe it's really prevalent out there, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts. There's this stigma that leadership is very corporate, that leadership is very I don't know, you have to be a certain type of person, dress a certain way, act a certain way. And it can almost be something that for those of us that don't maybe share those values or don't think, well, that's just not me. Like we can talk ourselves out of perhaps standing up for putting an idea like this on the table, or stepping into a new role, or deciding to go out on our own in our own business, because we can sort of self-select ourselves out of that traditional, outdated, dictatish, I don't think that's even a word, but you know what I mean, style of person that we think we need to be a leader. And I guess what I'm getting at is every single thing that you have said through this story so far, and everything that you've shared, I'm like, that is the epitome of great leadership, isn't it? And even right at the start, when you said like you didn't know how it was all going to come together, but you knew people you could bring in, and you know you had that amazing connection, that amazing partnership with I forget her name, I apologize.
Jen Hayes,
yeah,
amazing Jen Hayes.
Yeah, who you could then complement each other. And I think that's another really key thing for anyone listening to really get a handle on, isn't it? Like we don't have to know everything. We don't have to be on top of everything. We just need to know our strengths and what we bring. And then where there's gaps, we find other amazing people that have got those gaps as their strengths, and we work in partnership.
Yeah, 100% agree. And for me, that is something probably I've learned, you know, now I'm maturing in my career, but and just life. But you don't have to have all the answers. And it really is about, you know, partnering with people so that, you know, you bring in all of those different skills, insights, perspectives, so that together, you know, there's always a solution, I think is the other mantra that I have. You know, sometimes when there has been really difficult challenges to navigate, it's like, we'll get through this. There will be a solution. We just need to talk to the right people. And, you know, it's interesting with sometimes, you know, I'll have an idea and naively think, yep, that it'll be fine, and that's the way we need to go. And then it's someone, you know, on the committee, and in the early days, quite often it was Jen was like, have we thought about this, you know, whether it's risk or, you know, ensuring that that's financially savvy thing to do. Are we going to break even? Will we cover our costs? Will everyone be safe? It's like, okay. Oh, you know, instinctively I'm like, oh no, you know, it's we're about ideas. It's like, no, thank God, thank God we had that conversation, and thank God you are contributing those thoughts and ideas. So it's so important.
I 100% resonate with that. I can generate ideas like it's going out of fashion. Like ideas just ping, 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 ping. Ideas will come, and I have to have people around me that rein me back in. It's like, okay, that's a great idea, but you're currently working on this idea. Let's finish that. Then we can move on to this. And before you go ahead and do that, have a think about And at the time, especially for someone who's, you know, very creative in the mind and has got these great ideas, it can be a bit of a kick in the guts. It's like, oh, you're dampening my, you know, raining on my parade. But like you say, that with a little bit of hindsight, it's like, actually, okay, I hear you, and I'm glad you're on my side.
Absolutely.
One thing that I think is really, really important in any situation, but I guess, you know, heading up such a big event like this is, I guess, knowing that end point and knowing what success looks like. What do you think, or I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you think success looks like for you.
Yeah, you know, again, it's for me, I think success is achieving the outcomes that we set out to achieve. Yeah. You know, it can, for different scenarios, success can mean obviously very different things. But, you know, that is the success, that we've been able to really contribute and that outcome is actually multi-pronged. So yes, we've raised significant funds that help our community locally and really directly impact the services available to our cross-border community. It's acknowledging the great work that the local health service does to keep us well, return us to health if we've been unwell. But also, there's so many kind of side benefits and outcomes that make the City to City successful over the 7 years it's been running, and that is that community have that opportunity to come together. So we thought, yes, this is an event to raise funds, but actually what it's become is this fabulous celebration of community of both Albury-Wodonga and the extended border community that we have here, where they come out together. It's a very happy occasion and celebration, that they feel good that they're amongst their community, but they're also contributing to their community whilst they're participating, just through participating. And that feels really good, for whether that is a person doing it individually, doing it with their friends, doing it as a workplace, school. So a big part of the event is what we call our challenge cups. So having teams, and the most number of participants in a team win their category, and are awarded with this amazing probably $20 cup that they get to take home. So they get the trophy and the accolades, obviously. But I think that's probably what makes us proud, and what makes us know that it's been successful, is that people have walked away and they've had a great time, but we've made a significant contribution as a community to our community.
100%.
And they've done it safely. That's almost, of course, my biggest fear, race eve.
Yes.
And nervousness all the way through the day itself. It's not until, really after the event's done, we're packed up, that I can go, okay, did anyone get hurt? We've achieved what we set out to achieve. So that's success.
I think that's fabulous. I really do. I think it's so important, isn't it? Because an event like this, not everybody listening is going to be running an event like this, but in terms of any project or anything that anyone might be setting out to achieve, having a really clear vision of what you're trying to do in the first outset is important, isn't it? And also then knowing that end game, knowing what success looks like, deciding ahead of time what is going to make me feel really satisfied and fulfilled and proud at the end of this. Because otherwise, I found, I don't know if you have too, but personally, I found if I don't set that ahead of time, you never really get that completion. You never really get that feeling of, oh, well, that was all worth it, because you hadn't actually defined what the success of it looked like in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And even when we started City to City, kind of, back in those planning days, it was really about projecting the, that projection of, this is what we want to feel like, look like. We want for people to be confident that this is going to be well run, professional. It's going to be a great experience, and ensuring that vision was very apparent to sponsors, to stakeholders, and then to anyone signing up to participate in the event. So being very clear on what that experience would be like from the outset for the volunteers as well, was really important and a key to the success, I think.
100%. And it must be really exciting this year to be coming into a live face-to-face actually happening event again, because the joys of a global pandemic would have thrown a rather significant spanner in the works last year, I'm presuming.
Yeah. Look, so we're 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks out from this year's event. So really excited to be getting back into the real thing. We did need to move to a virtual format last year, and whilst that was great because we still had almost 1,000 people participate in the virtual format, it was challenging. We from an organising perspective, it was the lead up to say we actually thought we were going to go ahead. We're like, yep, we can do it. We really haven't had the COVID outbreak here in the local area. So we launched, we were off and running, and then literally a week later, the state border checkpoints were put in place, and we were like, okay, now there's always a solution. But how do we run a fun run when people are running to a time if they need to stop and show their border pass halfway along the course? That really just doesn't work.
Doesn't quite work.
And then we're like, okay, well, we can switch the course around. So because the checkpoints were only in place if you were travelling from Albury to Wodonga, but if you were travelling from Wodonga to Albury, there wasn't a checkpoint. So maybe we just start in Albury and finish in Wodonga and finish in Albury this year, but we just couldn't make it work. And so we moved into a virtual format. And rather than there being one day that you could compete and do your own city to city, we said, look, you've got the whole month. So our event went for a month, and so many decisions that we made, really not knowing where things would land. So one of the thoughts was, well, okay, when people enter the virtual city to city, they'll get a t-shirt as part of their entry fee, and then we'll sell shirts, and that'll really be the way that people can support the health service by buying a shirt. So I was like, okay, well, let's order more shirts than we have other years, because that'll be our primary fundraising tool this year, because we won't have that physical event. And we know people, as much as they want to support it, just not being able to get out physically with the community will mean that we will have less people registering. But it wasn't until we had boxes and boxes of these shirts down at QE2 Square, selling them, and we're kind of spruiking to people as they walk past, buy a shirt, support the health service. And there was just one person that said, you can't buy the shirt if you haven't done the race. It's a bit like getting the finisher medal without if you haven't done the actual event. It was like, okay, yeah. So just an insight into that psyche. And so even once our month had finished, we had all of these shirts that were like, okay, we now let's go back to previous participants and who hadn't registered to say, buy a shirt, this is how you can support us, or to team captains who typically had perhaps bought shirts for their organisations, here's how you can support us. Yeah. We put up a Shopify site, and we were, driving that, people to the Shopify site to buy a shirt. And then we were out to sponsors, buy them at cost price. And then in the end, we were giving them away because we just didn't want to see these shirts go to waste. It was like the event that just never ended. It was a, 6-month campaign as opposed to a 1-month campaign.
Wow.
And, because many of the committee members had roles that really were tied to a physical event. So that virtual event fell back to probably about 5 of us to keep it going between, our socials and our website and our marketing and the merchandise. So, yeah, it was really tough. It was hard to have passion for the passion project last year. That was for sure.
Yeah, it would have been really tough because, it's your baby. It was you birthed this idea, you brought it to life, you brought it to the big community event that it was. And so right at that last minute, to have that thrust upon you that no, you can't run a physical event, it has to go virtual. I mean, I love the resolve. I love the determination to still make the event happen, and to still have, 1,000 people register is an amazing achievement, isn't it? But I can really see how it would have been really draining on your energy, really. It would have really tested that perseverance to keep going, wouldn't it? Was there anything that you called on to keep you going, mentally, to say it's gonna end, or we're gonna get there, or were there little mantras you were chanting in your head?
There was a little bit of that. This too shall pass. But it was, just take it a step at a time, do what you can do. no one else is putting the pressure on yourself that I was. No one else was kind of probably as having those inner battles that I was. So no one else can see that. It's just you. But also, I guess it's just being, again, true to the vision and the outcomes that we wanted to achieve, the purpose of what we're doing. And fortunately, it's a little bit like childbirth. Once the pain fades, it was like, right, we're ready to go again.
Yeah.
So this will be the 8th child coming up. So yeah, really super excited.
I think it's absolutely fabulous. I always like to end, and I'm gonna give you the opportunity to share a little bit about this year's event and how people can get involved in future years events as well in a moment. But I'm always really, really curious to ask people, given everything you've learned through your career, given everything you've experienced in life and in organizing events like this and through your career, if you could give your teenage self one piece of advice, what would it be?
What I've learned, I was a teenage self and moving into uni, comms and marketing. So very much, I was going to be the marketing manager for Sports Girl. Remember this was the 80s, early 90s. Some glamorous corporate career. And I was fortunate enough to have some fabulous corporate opportunities and some great leadership roles now, as I said, kind of across the board with corporate, not-for-profits and within public sector roles. And, now I'm loving my role at Albury Wodonga Health. It's probably been the highlight of my career so far.
Amazing.
For purpose wins over for profit every single time. So, it's really that knowing what you're doing is for purpose and is making a difference for others. And that may be, in a commercial environment, certainly. But, that would be, I guess back teenage self, it's the career, it's the,
so driven by material things, aren't we, at that age?
I think so, and I know there are lots and lots of, young people who fortunately are not in that space. But for me, it's something that, for me now is very much for purpose is so much. That's where the fulfillment lies. That's where it is exciting to go to work and exciting to give more of yourself, because you know that you're achieving good things and you're on purpose for what that purpose is, for whatever it is for you.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice, and something that I resonate so personally with as well. I remember back in the early days of my career, it's climbing that career ladder, getting the next promotion, getting the next pay rise, and that means a new car, and then it's a new house. And don't get me wrong, all that stuff is awesome. I'd love to upgrade my car, but at the same time, that's not what drives me anymore. It's not, it's exactly as you say. It's not. We don't do what we do for the money. We do what we do for the love of what we do, for the greater good and for the impact it makes. And if that brings the money with it too, awesome.
yeah, absolutely.
100%. Now, when people are listening to this episode live, the 2022 event will have already happened, but just share a little bit about when this year's event is and how people can get involved going forwards.
Yeah, so typically the City to City is always the third Sunday in February. So yes, by the time this airs, hopefully we'll have had 5,000 people. It'll be the most number of participants and most money raised ever.
You've put it out there to the universe.
Absolutely,
now. Come on, universe.
Exactly right. So there's a number of ways to get involved. So, as a participant, our number 2 city.org.au website has all the information you need to find out more about the event, to register. We're always looking for people with energy and passion to join our committee. So just find me on LinkedIn or social media or email me. And always happy to have people contribute to the volunteer effort, whether that is part of the committee or just volunteering to be a course marshal or drinks attendee on the day of the event. Or getting a team together at your workplace or your school, your community group, because really we find that's where the magic is people saying, you know what, we're going to go and do this together and just have a great morning out with friends, family, colleagues, whoever you choose, or just do it yourself and, go for a run, go for a walk.
Sounds fabulous. We'll put all the links into the PDF document and the show notes that's going to attach to these episodes. So anyone listening in that might be interested in being a part of it, either as a participant or as a volunteer in the future years, we'll have all your contact details there and we'll know exactly where to go. Michelle, thank you so much. It's been such an inspirational conversation. I trust that it has been really valuable to people listening in. And I just want to say, I think you should be really proud of yourself for what you have achieved. And I wish you all the best for the 2022 event this year.
Well, thanks much, Claire. We look forward to seeing you and your family at the start line on the 20th of Feb.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to The Winding Road. If you've loved this conversation, you'll be pleased to know there is an ebook to accompany this episode. In there, you will find all sorts of resources, including a written transcript of the conversation, the key learning points we chatted about, and the contact details for my guest. Be sure to grab your copy from the show notes section of wherever you're listening to this episode. I'm Claire Markwick. This was The Winding Road, and until next time, bye-bye.